All right, welcome back to Something Super Podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're going to do a breakdown of some of Marvel's future content. So movies, TV shows, possibly even some comics.
Yep, we're going to could be covering everything that from some of the events of Endgame and how that's going to affect the next phase in Marvel's upcoming TV shows and movies.
So we're going to dive in real quick since Black Widow was supposed to come out last week and obviously was pushed back to late fall 2021. That's probably going to be our first topic. So obviously this is a prequel movie since Black Widow died in the final Marvel movies to get the Soul Stone. But I think a big thing for that is to look into, when was Black Widow, like the movie, where does that fall into the timeline?
I think it'll be really interesting to see where it is incorporated. From what I've been reading, it's sometime around Age of Ultron, maybe a little bit after or maybe a little bit before. But I'm interested to see more of her backstory and them actually finally give her due. She's a character who hasn't really had a lot of screen time. You know a little bit about her background as an assassin and what she had to go through. And she was always one that related to the Hulk, seeing herself as a monster. And now we're going to kind of get into her psyche to figure out why.
Sure, absolutely. I think a big thing for her is, like you said, it's more of a delve into her backstory and sort of a deeper look into why she is the way she is, why she has that sort of disconnect from everyone else in the group, obviously other than Hawkeye and the Hulk. And they're kind of lone wolves as well. You see the Hulk off-world with Thor, in the contest of champions, and he's just kind of doing his own thing. And even Hawkeye leaves the Avengers to go just be with his family. They don't really want necessarily to be a part of the team, and they don't really think that they need to be a part of it either. I think that a lot of the, Hawkeye, Hulk, Black Widow, they view it as doing more bad than good in certain circumstances, like the Battle of New York. I mean, that the amount of destruction versus the amount of people saved is kind of up in the air as to whether it was good or bad. Obviously, they saved the world, awesome. But, again, and I think it was, Age of Ultron, where they were doing the comparisons of, how many people actually died in each of these events where, it's sort of like catastrophic numbers.
Absolutely. And like you alluded to, the thing that with Hawkeye, the fact that he has a family that nobody knows about until literally halfway through the Infinity Saga. And even at the beginning of Endgame, he wasn't very present in Infinity War. And you learn at the beginning of Endgame that the reason why is because due to the events of Civil War, like Ant-Man, he's actually on house arrest. You can see the ankle monitor. He's at home with his family when they unfortunately get snapped away. And then that's what forces him to become the Ronin.
Sure. So, with some research, we found that Black Widow actually takes place between Civil War and Infinity War, so somewhere in between those crossover movies. And obviously, she was on the anti-Cap side for the conflict. But then she leaves and kind of goes into her own exile, as you see, in the hangar scene. And that's sort of what kicks off the whole Black Widow movie series, or potentially series, I guess. See if it's 1, 2, or 3 movies like they've been doing with the previous. And, if you haven't seen the trailers, check them out. They're awesome. But it gives you a little bit of an inside look to her childhood, her, mental breakdowns, the psyche that she has, the assassin school that she got enrolled into, not really wanting to, but that was, against her will. And then I think another cool thing is that they have I would call him the Russian Captain America, is the easiest way to put it. He basically has the exact same suit, shield, the whole nine. I thought that was awesome. And I absolutely love him in Stranger Things. So, I'm definitely excited to see how that whole thing plays out.
No, I'm 100% behind you on that. She's a very intriguing character. For as long as she's been in, she's one of the OG members of the Avengers. But you know almost nothing about her. She's just kind of a background player, and the fact that she's finally getting her limelight is what I'm really excited to see what she can really bring to the table.
Absolutely. So Mark and I were doing some research earlier today, and we actually saw that It actually might come out straight to Disney Plus next year, pending COVID being over, or potentially not, I guess. So we'll see, what the future holds for us and Marvel as far as releases. But we've seen things get released straight to Disney Plus before, so it might be a premium similar to like Mulan that was $30 when it came out. But honestly, if you've got some friends, some family that you want to watch it with for $30, it's definitely worth the watch.
Right. I know it's one that I'm definitely going to be checking out just because at this point I'm invested in Marvel and I really want to just build more into it. Like I said in our first episode, I'm more of a DC guy, but as far as Marvel goes, putting together the entire Infinity Saga, I'm just really interested to see how this will tie into some of the decisions that maybe she made in other movies. Obviously, in Endgame, her and Hawkeye are literally fighting for who's going to die. Like, they both want to sacrifice themselves. It ultimately becomes Black Widow, but that takes a lot of building up to in your own head, knowing that, hey, like, this might be the end of me, and I'm willing to do it for the right cause.
Definitely. And then, looking a little bit further from that, speaking of dead characters, we also have WandaVision, which is supposed to be dropping this year, but it's to be announced on an exact release date. I'm definitely excited for that as well. And that is going to be a post-Endgame series on Disney+. So I think a big thing about that is, and Mark and I had this conversation earlier as well, is it a building of her own world in her own mind, of having Vision still alive, and that's why she's able to change the costumes and the characters, and in one of the trailers they were black and white, back in like the 50s. So is it a construct of her own imagination and trying to keep Vision alive that way?
So doing a lot of the reading, I said, like you said, it starts off in black and white, and a lot of that's because what they're trying to do with this show is really pay homage to original TV series such as I Love Lucy, Bewitched, and a lot of those kind of shows. So the one thing that my takeaway from and the way that I'm interpreting what's going to happen in it is as of Endgame, Vision is dead, her brother is dead, and Iron Man is dead. Yes, I know, we're bringing up a lot of death, but it is what it is. But those were really three of the pillars that kind of kept her in check as far as her powers, because she is by far one of the most powerful people in the MCU. Just given her powers. Tony was always the one Tony Stark, he was always the one who could kind of bring her down to earth and calm her down. Her brother was someone that could always console her and she could confide in. And Vision was pretty much the love of her life, but now that all three of them constraints are gone, I think she might turn into more of a Jean Grey Dark Phoenix type presence in the MCU, possibly even ushering in the House of M storyline, and maybe even going farther on to become a villain in future movies.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I know recently Fox had their contract end with the whole X-Men franchise, so hopefully Disney, Marvel, whoever's going to pick them up and sort of incorporate them in there, since technically Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are both mutants. And that was alluded to in, I forget which X-Men movie, but they had them at the end as the children, which is awesome. And I'd love to see that sort of brought to light. And, obviously they're going to try to bring Wolverine into it and Magneto, et cetera, and I could go on forever listing X-Men. But I think that the big play here is, like you said, Mark, the House of M, and seeing her really sort of unleash her powers, because a lot of that stuff was sort of tied up with Fox, and now that, like I said, the contract is up, now we're really going to see a full power Wanda Maximoff.
Absolutely, and the other key takeaway is in the trailer, you actually can see Monica Rambeau coming back, who was only a child in the Captain Marvel movie. Well, interesting enough, she is actually a major key role in a lot of storylines within Marvel, and she's actually gone by a couple different names. I mean, you may know her as Photon, you may know her as Pulsar, you may know her as Spectrum, but mostly people know her as the original Captain Marvel, predating Carol Danvers. Now, on her ID badge, though, it does say Sword. So, with the next coming phases in Marvel, I believe that you may be seeing a dual threat coming to where there might be an intergalactic threat that Sword is dealing with. Meanwhile, there's a terrestrial threat. Maybe it's Doctor Doom. Maybe eventually they roll in Magneto. Maybe it's Wanda. We're not sure. But that would be something that S.H.I.E.L.D. may be dealing with now.
Oh, definitely. A few other things that I'm excited for. Obviously, at the end of Endgame, Captain America passed on the shield to the Falcon. So Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to be a huge thing coming out in 2021. Definitely looking forward to that. I'm a huge fan of both of those characters. I've seen their interviews. I've seen other things that they've acted in, and I think they're both phenomenal actors.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see Zemo coming back as being the main villain there. We haven't seen him since the end of Civil War when Black Panther saves him from shooting himself at the movie's climax. Also, set photos are from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier are revealing flag symbols for the island of Madripoor, which that's a huge deal because that's where Marvel really gets a lot of their villains. It's kind of like a villain home base. I mean, you could see anybody from the Hand, which you saw in Netflix's Daredevil and the Defenders. There's Viper, the Hellfire Club, even Wolverine's son, Daken. He even actually takes over the city and kind of runs things for a little bit. So that could actually lead into what brings Wolverine into the fold in the MCU.
Definitely. And, again, we touched on Black Widow already, which is supposed to come out in May of 2021. And on the same date, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is supposed to come out as well. And, I mean, we've heard about Ten Rings since 2008 when Iron Man, Tony Stark, was originally captured. That's actually who he was captured by. And it's been mentioned in various other movies, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3 with the Mandarin, even though it wasn't actually the Mandarin, which I'm glad they added that extra credit scene in the end, where the Mandarin actually meets the real Mandarin. And then it was actually also in Ant-Man, a small thing that wasn't really alluded to too much during the release of the Yellow Jacket suit. Ant-Man actually fought one of the Ten Rings agents that was in the room. One of those little things that's an Easter egg, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm not too familiar, to be honest with you guys, with the Ten Rings, but from what they can bring in, like Steve said, that originally when everyone saw Iron Man 3 and what a shit show that was with the fake Mandarin, I know that rubbed a lot of Iron Man fans the wrong way, but they went in, they added the post-credit scene where you see Ben Kingsley in prison. He's doing like the howdy doodies to everybody, and then someone comes up, grabs his hand, says, "I hear you've been using my name." Like, that was a jaw dropper for a lot of Marvel fans. And even coming up in the upcoming films, you have like you're going to be having a second Doctor Strange movie into the multiverse. Well, at the end of the first Spider-Man movie, Homecoming, after Falcon, I think his name is, yes, or no.
The Vulture?
Vulture, I'm sorry, yes. Not the Falcon. After the Vulture is captured, they have kind of a similar post-credit scene where he's in prison and he actually gets introduced to the villain that becomes Scorpion. So they're kind of setting up the Sinister Six in that plot line as well. So now that at the end of the newer one, Far From Home, you had Mysterio, they're kind of building out that Sinister Six. So you could even see the Sinister Six possibly playing a key role as a villain team that might be a terrestrial threat.
Oh, absolutely. And again, all of these things are, potentials in the Marvel Universe, whether it be cinematic or in the TV universe with now Disney Plus. But I think, again, we're all excited. At least, I know I am. Mark's pretty excited about a lot of the stuff that's coming up. We both recently picked up one of the original What If comics, and that's another series that'll be dropping summer of 2021. So the one that I actually just grabbed was, what if Tony Stark was a sellout? What if he never really became the Iron Man that we know today? Sort of rolling straight into his father's footsteps and saying, hey, I'm going to be the arms salesman that I was, sort of groomed to be. And making the Iron Man suits for the military, making, billions and billions of dollars, and just being that original Iron Man that we all sort of saw. And I definitely think that the What If series is going to be something that we can all sort of get into, because it's not necessarily the original storylines. It's not going to be the people that we know and love, and hopefully they can bring Robert Downey Jr. back for that. That would be phenomenal. But again, I'm excited to see what Marvel has and is willing to do for the What If series.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as the What If series goes, I mean, other things that could happen is maybe that might be, there's a lot of talks of not only having Tom Holland as Spider-Man in the MCU, but possibly bringing in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. So one of the other, so I would not be surprised if maybe in one of the What If series, it's not Tom Holland. What if we get an Andrew Garfield MCU Spider-Man? What if we get a Tobey Maguire MCU Spider-Man? And they could possibly use that to lead into Spider-Man 3 or even Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You may get into that. They may use that movie, which is my theory, is the Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness is going to open the prospect of giving a live-action Spider-Verse.
I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. I love the Spider-Verse Sony series, or the Sonyverse movie, Sony Spider-Verse movie. There we go. And I think bringing Miles Morales into the MCU would be an absolute hit. As long as Kevin Feige, can get his hands on that and sort of, run with it a little bit, I guess paralleling the Sony world that they've built. Again, huge fan of Miles Morales. They got the game coming out for the PS4, PS5, and that's been one of the most highly anticipated games after the original Spider-Man game that came out. That was sort of the game that we all wanted growing up but never really got. I actually finished that and gave it to Mark, and he's been playing it recently. I mean, what do you think of it?
So far, it has a great storyline. I kind of already know, and I've seen people do playthroughs, so I already know what to expect out of the story itself. And I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but it really does a good job, like the Arkham games, of including all of its villains and giving them all their own time to shine. You're not overwhelmed with too much. Like Kingpin is literally, I think, only like a 5 to 10 minute mission, and then you don't see him again. It leads into other villains. So just like with the Arkham series that they did with Arkham Knight, yes, the Joker is part of it, but he's not your main antagonist. You're more worried about Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight and what plot they have going on. Then it's just the Joker running around doing whatever he's doing. So far I'm loving it. It's a quick and easy playthrough, and it's one of the ones where you just lose track of time as you're playing.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I'm super excited to see what they do with Miles Morales in the new game. Again, gameplay is going to be very similar, but to have that extra set of powers that Miles has and to play it from a different perspective, I think is going to really bring a whole nuance to the game. A big thing for me, is playability. So I beat the game, and I could still run through the city and swing around and just play the extra side missions, and trying to get that 100% completion is a big thing for me. Get those suits, unlock a bunch of different stuff. It's just that game has replay and you can just continue to play it over and over and over again. And again, for me, that was the game that was supposed to come out for PlayStation 2 or, back in the day, like when you had those basic interests as a kid. Like, these are the things that you really wanted to do. And I know the original one had Venom in it, so hopefully we can get that kind of crossover maybe in the future on a different Spider-Man game.
And I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because as we know, Fox is slowly losing the rights to a lot of the Marvel characters, and I'm sure Disney's going to be right on picking them up. And going back to the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that would be a great time for them to be able to enroll Venom and Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock and Clay Cassidy and Carnage, who's supposed to be in the follow-up Venom movie for Fox. So that could also be another way to enroll those characters in as well, because Venom was always one of my favorite kind of anti-hero / villain. He kind of fits every role of what you need him to be. And Eddie Brock is just an interesting character in the ways that he changes once he bonds with Venom. And I mean, just the connection that those two have is so unique and so interesting, and it's something I feel like if Kevin Feige can get his hands on it, he could do a lot with that character.
I couldn't agree more. And again, to see Kevin Feige's take on a lot of the stuff is huge. Again, we got Spider-Man 3 coming out soon, and after seeing the 2 movies that have come out with Tom Holland, I couldn't be more excited that, Tom Holland is yet again going to be in another Spider-Man movie. He's a great actor. And then to see a little bit further what they're going to be doing in 2021. So obviously there was the original Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, to see him sort of interact with Venom in there. And then I guess obviously Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man sort of died off, and then you saw the two Amazing Spider-Man movies come out, which was great, but Andrew Garfield, sort of had his interaction, I guess would be the easiest way to put it, with Sony, so that didn't really work out too well. But to see a third one come out from Marvel, I think would be amazing. So, like you had said, Mark, I think having that whole the multiverse of madness, tie into that, I think it would be something that could potentially kickstart that whole Spider-Verse.
Right, because with Spider-Man 3, we also have Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro, who, like you said, played him in the Amazing Spider-Mans with Andrew Garfield. So now you have 4 members of the Sinister Six that are going to be in the MCU. You'll have Vulture, you'll have Scorpion, you'll have Electro, and you'll have Mysterio. So all you're really missing now is Doc Ock, and then just 1 or 2 or however many. The 6th person is always kind of interchanging. Sometimes there's the Rhino, sometimes there's a couple other people. So the Rhino, I believe, actually is in the MCU as well somewhere. They've been mentioned, but I don't think he's actually been shown.
And, like you had previously mentioned about the Sinister Six, that's sort of something that they're alluding to in the potential Spider-Man 3 in the MCU. So at the end of the second Spider-Man, you see him framed for the murder of Mysterio, who was played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And I'm glad that they kept J. Jonah Jameson, the same character from the original Spider-Man movies. That was amazing. I'm glad they paid tribute to him there. But again, you see Doc Ock, Vulture, Electro, Mysterio, Sandman, Kraven the Hunter. All of these people have sort of had their brief moment to shine, to say the least, in either previous movies or the current film franchise. And, given that Sony has a lot of the Spider-Man, I guess, villains and some of the characters, but Marvel is definitely taken that throne and I guess the pedestal to fully envelop a lot of those like B-list characters. The Vulture, I think, was a big one, like you said, in the first movie. But I know that they currently only have in contracts 1 more solo Spider-Man movie, so I'd like to see what they can do with that.
Right, and now I don't know if it's a joke or what the case be, but Ryan Reynolds also just signed a gigantic contract with Marvel, and he's actually slated to appear in the next Spider-Man movie, so we may finally be getting to see the best friends of Deadpool and Spider-Man, at least meeting and kind of going over.
Yeah, and if you've read any of the comics, the Deadpool Spider-Man dynamic is awesome because they're both those quick-witted, smart-ass, sort of funny characters. And, you've definitely seen that a little bit with Tom Holland. You saw it more with Andrew Garfield. He had that, sort of whiplash-type humor. And obviously, Ryan Reynolds. I don't even think he plays Deadpool. I think he just plays Ryan Reynolds in a Deadpool costume. To be 100% honest with you, that is just his personality.
Absolutely. And as of right now, it's just a rumor, but it's a rumor I kind of hope it's true. But a lot of people are saying that they're slating Deadpool to kind of be the new Stan Lee cameo. So it's very, very possible that you might see Deadpool popping up in a lot of Marvel movies, just having quick little one-liners or cameos, which I think that would be, number one, it'd be great marketing. The Deadpool franchise is one of the most marketed and best marketed movies from Marvel in a while. Ryan Reynolds is a comedy gem, and like you said, he doesn't play Wade Wilson. He is Wade Wilson. Like, just the way he acts from reading interviews at home with his wife, Blake Lively, and everything else. Like, I'm just excited to see what we could possibly do with him, and that would be an easy way for them to dumb down Deadpool without taking away from his character, because obviously his movies are rated R, and I don't think that we're going to see a rated R Avengers movie anytime soon. So just having him come in and make a quick joke, because if they do introduce, say, Wolverine, or if they do introduce, like, him to Spider-Man, like, there's a lot of comedy that they could play off there.
Definitely. And, being that Shuri from Wakanda is a technical genius, and so is Tom Holland's character. You know, they both have sort of that tech mantle that they're sort of stepping into for Tony Stark. I'd like to see where Tom Holland's character goes in, you know, not really living in Iron Man's shadow anymore, but sort of stepping into his own light and doing his own thing.
Right, and that was honestly one of the key scenes from Spider-Man Far From Home is when he's on the jet with Happy. And, you know, like Happy's sitting there flying or they're hovering or whatever the case be, and he runs to the back of the jet and he's using the hologram technology to kind of rebuild his suit. And Happy almost has this like look in his face like he did when he first started working with Iron Man. So that kind of showed like, okay, this kid can handle his own. He's not hiding in a shadow. And they're finally giving him the intelligence due that he has, because Spider-Man's honestly a genius when it comes to tech.
Yeah, and again, like I'd said before, I want him to sort of do his own thing, but pay that perfect homage to Iron Man and Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr.'s character, because, you know, as we've said before, and we'll say it probably a million more times, that really kicked off the MCU. I'm definitely excited to see, you know, different characters evolve. Like I said, Shuri, I think, would be an awesome new Black Panther, which is something that we're going to get into in a little bit, seeing the Black Panther 2 movie and what they have in store for the future. But, you know, to jump real quick back to Spider-Man, I would like to see Tom Holland sort of head up the new Young Avengers, I guess would be the best way to put it, and see sort of where they take that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said earlier, I mean, I'm really happy that they brought J.K. Simmons back as J. Jonah Jameson, because, my God, is he a great and gifted person to play that role, and he does it so keenly and so perfectly. But one of the bigger things that I am excited for is the rumor that Jon Bernthal may be coming back to the MCU as the Punisher. I haven't heard much about the other series, such as Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Daredevil. I haven't heard much about those characters, but there's heavy rumoring that Jon Bernthal will be reprising his role at some point as the Punisher in the MCU. And once they find a way to write him into a storyline, I really think that would give the MCU kind of like a little bit more grit like you see in the DC universe.
Yeah, and I know there were talks about making John Cena into the Sandman, which I think would be an interesting take on that. Obviously, we saw it in, what was it, Amazing Spider-Man 1, correct?
Sandman was in Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire.
Yes, okay, so that, I mean, again, we haven't seen him in years. It would be a great thing to see. You know, John Cena's played a couple interesting roles, I guess, as of late in what I would call children's movies. But to see him on screen as a super villain, I think would be pretty cool, too.
Not to go off beat, I'm not sure who exactly he is, but he is going to be in the new Suicide Squad movie. He is one of the members.
Awesome.
I'm not sure who. I would have to do some research, but I do know he was signed on and casted for that.
Okay. And, I mean, that would be awesome as well. Whether it's Sandman, as he's alluded to on his social media accounts, or, you know, whether they reprise him as another large, bulky type character.
Yeah, I mean, John Cena has kind of like a witty kind of side to him, and I could see him fitting in very well into the Marvel universe. And I would be intrigued to see like what he could bring, because obviously you're going to have The Rock coming into the DCEU as Black Adam. So you're starting to see these wrestlers. Obviously, Dave Bautista was Drax. You're seeing a lot of MMA fighters. You're seeing a lot of WWE wrestlers and things like that kind of carrying over. And this is where they could shine. They're the big meathead kind of roles in comic book characters.
Yeah, I would love to see, you know, again, we've said it a million times, different villains, you know, not necessarily the Jokers or, you know, the Venoms, although I do want to see Venom cross over into the MCU, but we don't just want to see the main villains. We want to see those offshoot villains, the Vulture, Electro, et cetera, and you know, even Morbius, who's coming out, you know, they're going to bring that into, I believe it's 2021 as well, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
So, you know, to see Morbius as I guess you would call him a villain. You know, he starts out as just a scientist, and then they sort of see what they can do with that. and now he's a vampire. I mean, I don't think they necessarily want to call him a vampire, but he's definitely a vampire, and that would sort of tie in the Blade series, which is a Marvel property as well. So, there's definitely a lot going on in the Marvel Universe, especially the MCU.
Absolutely. And I mean, I would love to see them eventually bring Blade. Eventually bring Blade into the fold. I believe that there are already plans on writing him in. And even to bring a Deadpool villain like Mr. Sinister. And like, he's a very, very powerful mutant that not many people really know of. I know that I believe it was Deadpool 2, they show an Essex Corp, like briefcase, which is Mr. Sinister's company, but they don't actually mention him. They don't show him. I haven't heard any rumors about him coming in, but he's also somebody that could be possibly on a Doctor Doom or a Thanos type level threat.
Yeah, and I'd love to see that because, the build-up for Thanos was from the first crossover movie. I mean, it was, who is that guy? And then for a lot of the people that didn't know the comics or, have any prior knowledge of Marvel, that bolstered a lot of research. Looking into, who are the main villains, who are the biggest bads that are going to be in the Marvel Universe. Finding out it was Thanos, doing their research on Thanos. And then awaiting the big reveal of Thanos, the Infinity Gauntlet, the Infinity Stones, and sort of seeing how everything ties together. I think the next time we're probably going to see anything about Spider-Man 3 would be sometime around when Black Widow releases. Again, there may be trailers here and there, but I think, an after-credit scene would be something big for them. I know that there was, and Spider-Man has now done this twice, they mess around too much with the dates and times of things happening. So I know in the first Spider-Man movie, they sort of screwed up I think it was 8 years after the events in New York, when that technically wasn't correct. And then in the second Spider-Man movie, they showed the date on his passport and when that would expire. And, it was supposed to be X amount of years in the future. Again, I love them. I think they're doing an amazing job. Just stay away from the dates and times.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing that they kind of don't want to write themselves into a corner with is messing up dates and timelines, because then it runs into, well, if Spider-Man was supposed to be here, how could he have been there? And you start running into those issues, which when you have this big of a universe, there's going to be some errors. There's going to be some things like that fall through the cracks. I know I watch like a VFX channel where they were talking about, they brought in one of the main producers of Endgame, and he says that when Tony takes the stones from Thanos and he goes to do the snap, you can actually see his thumb kind of phase a little bit through the gauntlet. And it was something that literally they were like, yeah, we didn't even notice that until it was in theaters. So like when you're working on projects that are this big, like there are going to be minor issues, but as long as you can keep them minor and make sure to kind of find a way to correct them without it being super obvious and rewriting everything, I think they should be perfectly fine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So I think for today, that's all I've got as far as future Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel TV shows. What about you, Mark?
No, yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to see what they do, how the shows tie in. There's also going to be a Loki TV show. There's going to be a Hawkeye series. So I'm really interested to see what they do with those and, well, like what they can bring to the table there. But outside of that, that was everything that I had.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in. My name is Steve.
And I'm Mark.
And that's been Something Super.